So we're going to talk about police trade-ins. You'll see a lot of deals on GunBroker for police trade-ins. And people say, well, you know, if the police officer doesn't want the gun anymore, why should I? And there's an old saying, it's called carried often, shot little. A police officer's gun on the outside is probably going to look like hell. It's going to be beat up, but the inside is most likely going to be in excellent condition. Most police officers don't get to the range nearly as often as much as they should. They got a wife and kids waiting for them at home, and when they get off duty after a long day of patrolling the streets or filling out paperwork or doing whatever it is that their department has them doing, the last thing they want to do is spend 2 hours on the range practicing their marksmanship like they should be doing, because, you know, they got a family to take care of and they want a marriage to keep intact, and, you know, they've got to set some priorities. The advantage to you is that companies like Glock come along and say, well, you know, trade in your guns and we'll upgrade you with new guns at a fraction of the cost that they normally cost, and then they'll sell those guns off at a much cheaper price, or some wholesale distributor will buy up a bunch of them and sell them off at a much lower price. This one I think was $4.25 shipped, no tax. So, you know, other than my DROS fees for the background check and paperwork for California, you know, well under $500 out the door. I had a gun. The slide wasn't nearly as pretty as it is now. I had that refinished with Cerakote, which added another $100 to the cost. But that wasn't money spent all in one shot. You know, I had the gun and shot it for quite a bit before I did that. I also added some upgrade parts that I had laying around. So, you know, pretty good gun. The barrel was in excellent condition. The internals, the springs were all in excellent condition. They weren't shot out. So, you know, definitely an example of carried often, shot little. I'm going to demonstrate here that the gun is empty because there is no round in the chamber, no round in the magazine. One of the upgrades I mentioned is this, and I have it on pretty much all my Glocks, is this Tango Down Vickers. Larry Vickers, famous shooter, instructor, former Delta Force guy, helped him design this. Extended slide stop. You can see it's got a little extra bump there for extra surface area for your thumb to catch on. Excuse the noise, it's going to get loud here for a second. Okay. Same company makes this extended magazine release. It's kind of the Goldilocks of magazine releases. It splits the difference between Glock's factory OEM magazine release and their extended magazine release, which is too far out for me. Too great a risk of accidentally engaging it and dropping your magazine while you're training. Never run into that problem with these. Probably got about 10,000 or more rounds downrange using them on my various Glocks. At least 2,000 rounds through this police trade-in with only a handful of malfunctions, all of which were fatigue on my part. I started to limp wristing because, you know, on hour 8 of in a day of a 4-day training class, you start wearing out pretty quickly. Love it. It came with night sights, but the night sights that were on it were worn out. They had sort of old Mepro lights on there. Good brand. I tend to go with Ameriglow. They're a little less expensive, but they're using the exact same parts as Trigicon, a very high-end, very expensive brand. They've got the tritium inserts, which glow in the dark and low light situations, with white outlines around the front one and not the white outlines around the rear. Like that, it helps you distinguish between the front sight and the rear, and you're supposed to be putting your hard focus on the front sight, letting your rear sights and the target become a blur. These help you do that. Not as much as the Spartans, but which, you know, instinctively you do that because it's got the big orange glow around there. Spartans would be the same as the Trigicon HD. What else can I tell you about it? The Cerakote on the slides held up really well. I'll try to get in here close. You can see some holster wear, but, you know, over 2,000 pulls out of a holster. See some wear there as well. Not bad. You might be asking yourself, what is that goofy number? I don't know if it's coming out okay. That goofy number on the slide. That is a control number that the Washington State Troopers etched into the side of their guns, because apparently a serial number wasn't enough for them. So they wanted something that was a little larger, easier to see, I assume. No other upgrades. I absolutely love this gun. It is reliable. Love Glocks. Glocks, to me, are the best choice for self-defense. Reason being, simplicity of design. It's designed to function well. There's a lot of thought into the design. The safety, there's 5 safeties on a Glock, but the one you would think of as a traditional safety isn't a thumb safety. It's built in to the trigger, and so unless your finger's in there pulling on it like a finger would, it's not going to pull. So clothing and twigs and things like that are very unlikely to pull the trigger, though when you're carrying on your body, you want it in a holster that covers the trigger well. You want to keep your finger out of the trigger well. It's one of the 4 safety rules. About the trigger pull, it's got a medium to light trigger pull. Same trigger pull start to finish, so you apply the same amount of pressure you do on your first pull as you do your second pull, your third pull, your fourth pull. That makes the gun very easier to master. So you master your trigger pull faster, and that's one less thing you're concentrating on your thousands of things you're trying to do when you're shooting. Trigger reset on a Glock is very short, and trigger reset is the point at which, after you've pulled the trigger and fired it, you start to release the trigger. The reset's how far out you have to release it before it'll function again. That's a very short distance. It's also got a loud click that you can hear, even over your fellow shooter shooting in the range or a training course or whatever. And you can feel the click is a very tactile click that you feel in your hand. And you might not feel that during a firefight, but all that training that you're doing, you're building up the muscle memory, and so eventually you learn to only release your trigger just as far as you need to for it to reset. With it being short, the advantage of that is, compared to guns like the M&P or the XD, the advantage of it being shorter, and granted it's a nitpicking here, those are great guns. The advantage is the less you move your finger for the trigger between your shots, the less movement there is there, the less moving of the gun there is, because finger movement translates to hand movement, translates to arm movement, translates to the gun moving. So the less movement going on there between those pulls, the better. So once you get back on sight, and you start to pull that trigger, you know you're not going to pull yourself off sight. Like I said, very reliable, very fun to shoot. As reliable as the day it came off the floor, despite the fact that for at least 4 or 5 years, probably a lot longer, a police officer carried this in their holster and used it for quite a bit before I did. So is it a good idea to get a police trade-in? I'd say 99.99% of the time it's going to be a great idea. It's going to save you some money. Is it going to be the prettiest gun in the world? Probably not, but it's going to function, it's going to work, and I think they're a good deal.